strong bonds. I was the best man at my roommate's wedding. So I think if you're open to it, no matter where you go, like if I could, if me being a very awkward international student could settle down in a place like Carlinville, Illinois, I think you'll be fine no matter where you go. And as long as you're open to people, you kind of, and you can kind of observe your surroundings and adjust. I think they'll serve you really well. And again, that I can't repeat this enough. That's one of those things that Guilford does teach you, right? Like it's acceptance. Like we have a lot of you are from different backgrounds, different majors, and yet we're sitting here on the same forum, and yeah, we have something in common. So I think Guilford does enable you to adjust. Like you'll be fine. So you'll make friends. As far as a family situation goes, look, here's the thing. It varies from person to person. Like if somebody's, you know, brother or like somebody close to them is, Lord forbid, terminal, right? I'm not going to tell you to leave them and go do whatever. Like it's tough to make that call. But again, family doesn't go anywhere either, right? So one of the hardest things I had to do was leave Pakistan. But now thanks to technology, I still talk to my parents every single day. I talk to my brothers every single day, and yeah, I don't have to be in the same vicinity to maintain contact with them. Now you got FaceTime, you got Zoom. Calling plans are a lot better than what they used to be. So I think um, uh, it's easier. The world's become a lot smaller since. So, but that being said, if you have certain circumstances, if you got somebody that you need to take care of, yeah, like I think if this is my personal belief. Like I actually had a friend in Calgary who, and he couldn't make partner at his law firm because his mother was terminal. He spent 3 years taking care of her, and that's cost him his partnership. But that being said, a few years down the line, some other firm actually picked him up because the guy was smart, and he ended up getting what was due to him anyway. So if you do have to spend time with family or friends or a girlfriend or whatever, you'll get another opportunity to prove yourself. So, like I said, nothing's like definitive.
Thanks, man.
All right. Should we just move on to the next question, Brooks? So, okay.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question was about COVID-19 and the experience at Clorox. So it's interesting because yes, we did see a 500x increase in demand for our product. Wipes were kind of wiped out. Um, we from a finance perspective, it was interesting because it brought back memories of 2008 when there was a liquidity crisis in the market. All of a sudden, firms couldn't raise money to pay off their bills on a daily basis, right? So I was actually out on paternity leave. When I came back, I learned from my boss that we're actually going to the market to issue a bond, right? And firms generally do that to raise money where they want to make sure that their balance sheets are well padded up in case something happens. So I actually asked my boss. I was like, "Listen, our stock price is going up. Clearly, the market is pricing us favorably. Why would we even care about? There is no liquidity crunch right now. The banks are well capitalized. Why are we raising money?" And his response was, he's like, can you guarantee what's going to happen next week? And the answer was no. Like none of us have a crystal ball where we're like, okay, the banks are going to be fine a week from today. Something could happen. It could be a black swan event, and all of a sudden your credit lines are cut. If you have deposits at a certain bank, maybe the firm goes belly up and only a certain amount is insured. So basically, to secure our position, we ended up going to the market, and we were back then when we issued a 500 million note. I think we were the sixth lowest price issuance in history. So I mean that was a pretty big achievement. It was good to be a part of that deal team that did that. But I mean the good thing is we're getting a lot of press. So we have a new CEO, Linda Rendell. Again, she's just like 2 or 3 years my senior, but uh, she's one of the youngest CEOs of a Fortune 500 company, and the market has seemed to react very favorably to her. But I think it's also some of the steps that Clorox themselves have taken. So I'll give you an example. One of the reasons why you can't find our wipes on the shelves these days is because I don't know if this was a government mandate or if it was just a corporate decision, because I wasn't privy to these conversations. But I actually reached out to our CEO's assistant, and I was like, come on, like, can you just give me a canister of wipes? They were a commodity a year from now. And what she said to me was, she said, just to let you know, back then our CEO was Benno Dor. She's like, Benno can't even get his hands on them right now because everything off the product line is now going to hospitals and first responders. So we are sending everything to our to healthcare workers because they're the ones that have been deemed essential. And so you're just going to have to wait or just go buy bleach and I'll send you a YouTube video and you can make your own wipes. So the good thing is, I definitely appreciated that, that we were taking, our response to this pandemic that seriously, where we sort of knew who we needed to cater to. But also what I was proud of was, so there were a few retailers on Amazon that started hiking prices. Sorry guys, my kid's over here. So what ended up happening was that they started hiking prices. So Clorox, as a company, we struck down on those. So we reached out to Amazon and said, by the way, if a price of a 3-pack canister is $12, you've got somebody who's charging 36, shut them down right now, because we don't want to hike our prices. Like, that's not the way we do business. So, again, it was a ethically responsible company, and I think we proved ourselves during this time to do that. So, excuse me for a second, guys. Aiden, why don't you go outside? So yeah. On the flip side, though, things have been super hectic, right? Like, as your demand goes up, a lot of responsibilities sort of lie on your shoulders. So, for example, within the treasury group, we have to model a bunch of different scenarios. Okay, so what if demand continues to go up the way it did? 2020 is not a typical year. Tell me what your forecast is going to be for 2021, right? Who knows? All of a sudden, you've got all these people that are stacking canisters. Like, if you have like a 10-pack sitting on your on your shelf, you're not going to buy more Clorox this year, right? So how do the adjustments into your demand forecast kind of impact your finances? So it's been a lot of work, but at the same time, it's super interesting. So yeah. Go ahead, Brooks.
Yeah, I actually have a question. So, a lot of us, almost all of us, are in Robert's Latin America class right now, and so like some of us are doing our projects on oil and the petroleum industry. And I knew like you had worked in oil
Yeah.
up in Calgary. Like, could you kind of talk about that and kind of how different maybe that industry is compared to maybe what you've worked in before? Because when we're researching this, the oil prices are just so volatile and like things can just blow up at any moment. So could you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So oil's a very different business compared to a CPG, Clorox, right? So Clorox is high volume, low margins. So like I said, despite the fact that the demand's gone through the roof, there's only so much we can make on each sale. Oil, on the other hand, your margins can be huge. So Brooks, imagine you're an oil and gas company, right? All of a sudden you buy a well somewhere in Texas. Everything, all in, your drilling costs, your cost of extraction, refining, everything is about $35, right? All of a sudden, oil falls down to $30. Now you're losing $5 a barrel, versus I think the price is currently at 60 right now. So those people, the delta between production and the sales price, all of a sudden it's gone up. Also, it's weird because I'm in California, which is a very pro renewable economy, right? And by the way, I see the value in that. Everybody drives a Tesla. Those who can afford it have Tesla roofs and everything. So I respect that. I still think that our dependency on oil is not going to phase away that soon, because at the end of the day, the machinery that you're using to extract lithium for these batteries, or just your production plants, that's still oil dependent, right? Or look at our cell phones, stuff that we carry. All of these are petrochemical byproducts. So it's a very different industry, which I understand. And weirdly enough, like it was in the slumps even during the last administration. But when this administration is taking place, it seems to be the only industry that's doing well. And all of a sudden, you would think like, the tech sector or the renewable sector, which would react very favorable to the current administration, it's lagging behind. So all this to say is like, it's a very different business, Brooks. It's a lot of that is very investment heavy. So for example, uh, I'll compare Talisman Energy, where I used to work, to Clorox. So Clorox is a company that makes money. We're a very stable business. No matter how the economy is, we're going to be fine. Talisman was strictly dependent on how the oil price is. So we're making losses year in, year out. Yet banks were willing to write checks and basically keep the company afloat. And our credit line over there was close to $4 billion. At Clorox, my credit line over here is 1.3 billion. So again, the reason for that is it's a very resource intensive industry, and energy bankers understand that if I go, if I want to explore some properties in Peru, for example, to make those economical, it's a very resource intensive process, and I'll need that money to do it. So they'd be more than willing to write me checks. Now, here's where you get in trouble, and this is what happened to Talisman. We hit dry hole after dry hole, right? So and our CEO back then, he was ex BP, and he was trying to run a very small oil and gas company like he would have ran BP, which was, BP pretty much gets a check from the UK government. They can go wherever they want, they can explore, and yeah, if they hit a snag, no worries, somebody will come and bail them out. Talisman couldn't have operated that way. So when we had some very adventurous ventures, like when we ended up going to Poland and we ended up going to Peru, yeah, those are very bad investment decisions for us. Apart from just the money that we lost, you had a bunch of ticked off investors who were like, okay, so we're writing all these checks to you, and you've got nothing to show for it. In fact, your production is declining because the money that you spent on all these exploration projects that could have been spent on maintaining these wells that are actually making you money, and guess what? Those wells are now falling apart. So it's a very different industry altogether, but it's kind of cool to transition from that to this, because you kind of see both sides, right? So I've got people in my family that are very anti-energy, conventional energy. They think oil should be phased out altogether, and though I understand their point of view, and I can respect it, I also try to convince them, listen, that's not realistic just yet. Give it a few years, and quite honestly, I'm not sure if it'll happen within our lifetimes. It may, but we're still there's still a lot that industry provides us to enable us to do some of the things that we do, even for renewables. So, hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you. It's pretty interesting because like in Latin America, there's a lot of extractive energies,
Yeah.
extractive industries in general. So it's very different in how you have to analyze it and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. I think one thing that's going to be common for all those industries is, supposing somebody's even mining, I don't know if they're still doing coal somewhere in Latam or not, but it's all going to be driven by commodity prices, and that's determined by the market. So in good times, and this was the frustrating part when I moved to Calgary. So when you have oil at 140 bucks, guess what? Everybody looks like a genius, right? So you've got these young CEOs who are just right out of school, like they were 25-year-olds who just kind of hit the jackpot because they own a property that all of a sudden is very resource rich. But then when things collapse, you did not invest any money in R&D. You didn't figure out cheaper ways to drill oil or cleaner ways to drill oil. And then all of a sudden, if you have a government that's not, if they're going to levy a carbon tax on production or something, you're all of a sudden you're not equipped to react to it. So what I always tell people is, there's a saying, you want to fix your roof on sunny days, not when it rains. So, whenever you guys end up somewhere, and if your company is doing well, hopefully that's the time when you want to make sure that you're putting in the right policies in place, you're putting in the right practices in place, that if things do go south, how do you react to that? So. Okay.
Yeah, Asad, I just had a question about, like I know you said it was pretty crazy during like the beginning of the pandemic, and obviously it's still going on now. I'm wondering but now we're starting to see like the, the end of the road with the vaccine getting distributed more. I'm wondering, have you guys like started to prepare like for things to go like back to normal? Are you guys already in that kind of like, things are about to calm down phase?
Yeah, Liam, that's a great question, and the short answer is yes, we have. So, but we've been prepping for that since last year. I remember, like, so generally when we have a budget cycle, right? Obviously, you have to kind of forecast what your demand may be, and that then kind of drives your revenues, which then drive your cash flow. I was doing 3 different scenarios: A, price keeps going up; B, the status quo; C, all of a sudden the vaccine rolls out and everything is, goes back to normal. So yes, we are preparing for that, and that's one of those reasons why we kind of issued the bond last year, is because we wanted to ensure that we're well capitalized to weather the storm. Supposing there is a cliff in the demand for disinfectant products, then we'll be ready for it. And I think and the good thing is, like, my boss has been in this role for about 20 years, so he's gone through all sorts of like different scenarios. He's seen every crisis there is. So he made sure that we, not only us, but the board as well, were very well prepared to kind of see the scenario. But, you know, it kind of leads into this other question. So I was having a discussion with our CFO yesterday, and he just kind of called in to see, you know, how we were doing and if we're still hanging in there. Nobody can answer the question on what the new normal is going to look like. So supposing, even with the vaccine rolling out, right? It's sort of different in North Carolina, because I think, you know, we have the ability to, you know, most of us drive everywhere over there. But for example, over here, for me to get to Oakland, I have to take the train, and a bunch of people did that, right? Because parking's super expensive, roads are horrible, traffic's horrible. Why would you want that? Can anyone guarantee that the guy I'm sitting next to in the train has gotten the vaccine? Like, a lot of people are still opposed to it, rightly or wrongly. Like, I mean, that's a separate debate. I mean, I can't wait to get in line to get my shots, but a lot of people just don't trust the system enough where they're willing to do that. So what is the new normal going to look like? Who knows? And that's where we don't think the demand for our white canisters or bleach is going to go to zero. We still think your airlines, your trains, your public transit, your government offices are still going to have, and your hospitals are still going to need our product. So that's still going to remain elevated. But obviously, it won't be the March 2020 forecast either. I think it'll be a lot more tempered this time around. Okay. All right. I think we've already touched upon the next question, which is, you know, how did I utilize my Guilford degree in my career with some of the companies? It's, I mean, Guilford just teaches you a lot, apart from just what you guys are learning academically. There's a lot of intangibles that we pick up at Guilford, right? And one of the things I admire the most about, you know, my fellow Guilfordians is, like, I think for the most part, we were pretty well-rounded individuals, right? So Brooks, when I was talking to Mike, who's our international accounting associate director in Durham, one of the things I pitched to him, I was like, well, not only is he an econ major, which is one of the hardest majors at Guilford, he also plays football. So maintaining that kind of, you know, all-round schedule is pretty tough, right? So it's, and don't get me wrong, like, you know, having gone to Ole Miss, I was neighbors with Patrick Willis, who then ended up playing for the 49ers.
That's
Yeah, and I reached out to him on LinkedIn. Obviously, I got denied because, well, you know, why do you want to get in touch with me? But still, like, it was kind of cool. But I also know that the academic burden on some of your D1 athletes isn't the same, unless you go to certain schools. Like, I think Notre Dame, everybody has to take calculus over there, and or, you know, one of the military academies, I think they were pretty strenuous. But I was like, Guilford, yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're an athlete or whether you have, like, a job on the weekend. At the end of the day, you better have your paper ready to be submitted at the end of the semester, and that's the requirement. So, and that's what I tell people about Guilford students as a whole. I was like, yeah, we are pretty well-rounded individuals. And I think, was it you, Ben Kelly, who mentioned that you know, econ was your minor, and you also did.
Yeah.
So I mean, there you go. It's like those are some pretty demanding majors that that are offered at a place like Guilford. But, you know, students actually step up to that challenge, and they make it look easy. I still remember, like, I went to school with a couple of guys who were, you know, and while we were struggling to get our papers in, they would just come in at the last moment, just blow a certain assignment out of the water, and they were very good at it. So I was like, that's what Guilford is. Like, it gives you a wide array of individuals, and then we just sort of learn how to adjust to those circumstances, right? Like, whether you have to pull in the all-nighter or you start working at the start of the semester, at the end of the day, we know we'll figure it out, and that's what Guilford sort of does for you. And I don't know, like, you guys probably have friends that go to bigger schools, and maybe they have similar experiences, but I can definitely tell the kind of coaching that we received at Guilford did benefit me a lot.
Do you have, like, a favorite class you took at Guilford, or, like, maybe like a least favorite you can kind of talk about? Maybe we can relate to a little bit.
I forgot the name of the class, but it was one of the capstone courses I took with Bob, where, sorry, it was with Robert, and my research thesis was the cocaine economy in Colombia, and this is before there was Narcos or anything else on Netflix, right? I just kind of did a deep dive into how the production of cocaine impacted the rest of the economy, and right then, starting from the Clinton administration, well, all the way from Reagan, but it kind of got ramped up during the Clinton administration. They started spending, a lot of funds trying to curb this economy. But guess what? The price of cocaine kept falling in Miami and like California and all. So clearly, production wasn't an issue. Supply was an issue. It was my job to figure out, okay, how is this happening? And this might sound like you guys may be indifferent about it, but the way I started my presentation was, I'm working on cocaine in Colombia, and from there we kind of went off, and I had a little bag of I think it was coffee creamer that I was like, a gram of cocaine now costs this much, and so again that got a few laughs, but also had everybody engaged. But here's the thing, you kind of realize that these small economies do exist, no matter how many. Like, a lot of that is demand driven, right? Like, so as long as there's a demand for cocaine, your producers are going to figure out a way to get it to the market. And like I said, the fact that despite spending, like, I think back then it was like $1.5 billion, I'm sure we've spent a lot more since, but despite spending like $1.5 billion over a period of 5 years, and you still see the price of cocaine declining in the open market and production increasing, what ended up happening was the FARC rebels, they ended up going deeper into the jungles where they weren't accessible through planes and, the paramilitary forces of Colombia, and they just found alternative routes, right? So all of a sudden, we don't have to ship through Mexico. Let's just go through the Caribbean instead. No worries. I'm sorry, I'm just getting a message from Giovanni. So yeah, like it. I think that was just a very interesting project to work on. And then, obviously when Narcos comes out, you see a lot of what you worked on now being, displayed as a TV show. So that was kind of neat to see. Least favorite, I don't think I have a least favorite class as such, Brooks. There were some challenging classes, but I think for the most part, I enjoyed most of them. Okay. The next question that says, what is something that you guys do not know about me that may be some of my experience and decisions? I think I spoke about it earlier, where I said, being an international student, I sort of had to jump around, right? Like I didn't have the option of, so when I was being recruited at Guilford, a lot of companies I just simply couldn't work for. So for example, if the Peace Corps was coming to recruit, I couldn't work for them because they can't sponsor me for the visa. So I actually used to go to Wake Forest. I used to go to A&T. I used to go to UNC and just kind of slap on a name tag, pretended to be a student from there. And I used to go to their career fairs, and that's how I got myself in front of some of the banks, some of the larger companies that would sponsor me. So I think that's why I was a little limited, but at the same time, things happen for a reason. It was very challenging because the moment people realize that, you're not from there, and HR may have to do some extra paperwork to process your visa application, instantly you were kind of like you were put at the bottom of the pile, right? And for a young 22-year-old who thinks he knows everything, that was a pretty tough pill to swallow, because I had great internships under my belt. I'd worked for Smith Barney back then, and I developed this internship program where I tried to have Smith Barney recruit one Guilford Rising senior every year. I think somewhere like somebody forgot to pass it on forward, and then I think it kind of got derailed. But for the 2 or 3 years after I'd graduated, that program was still ongoing, where a graduating senior would go. But I mean, that's if you do see certain gaps in my resume, the reason was because I had to jump around to just make a decision on how do I solidify my immigrant status versus just being at the mercy of some HR executive who may decide, okay, all of a sudden this is not worth it. And by the way, that did happen to me once, right? So right after graduation, I was a network administrator at a school in Winston-Salem. And the school had promised me, they're like, you know what, we'll sponsor your visa. It won't be a problem at all. And October rolls around, and that's when the deadline is for the filing. October 31st, it was Halloween. Then all of a sudden they made a decision. We got a call from Michigan saying, where our head office was located. They were like, yeah, they've decided not to process your visa application. To which I said, so right now I can't even find another job, right? So what do you want me to do? And the principal made a joke. She said, well, you can marry one of the teachers. I was like, no, that's not the right thing to do, right? But that's where the challenge was, where all of a sudden I was like, okay, so basically you guys waited to the last very day to tell me that you can't help me out over here, and now I can't find something else. But that's when I actually started studying for the GMAT, and I was like, you know, I'm not going to get married. That's again, I'm not going to do a paper wedding just to settle down. And that's where I thankfully I ended up getting a few offers from a few decent grad schools where I was able to not only go back to grad school, but also get my visa extended and then network and find a better job. So ideally, I would have liked to join one company right after graduation and grow up with them, but obviously our circumstances are different, and sometimes you have the opportunity to do that, and other times you don't, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, things do work themselves out. So,
you mentioned like you were studying for the GMAT. Like, how did you kind of approach it? Like, are you somebody that's always been good at standardized tests? Because I've talked to some like CPAs, then they're just like, oh, like I was always good at tests, and whereas like I'm not. So, kind of what were you? What was your approach to that?
so Brooks, you and me both. And to give you an idea, the worst part was my brothers are great at it, right? Like these are guys that got back then, it was like 1600s in their SATs, like they were scoring perfect. I was barely cracked the 60th percentile. But one of the things I did do, and again, this is where our Guilford education does come into play. Back then, and they might be phasing it out now, I'm not sure, but they had a analytical writing section as a part of the GMAT. So I knocked that out of the park. So that was like, I was at the 90th percentile for that. So writing was great. Like Bob and Robert did like great job teaching us how to actually think analytically and write properly. But obviously my score was, I don't even think I cracked a 600 back then. So all of a sudden, I was applying to these schools where the average was like 620 to like 750 or whatever. In front of the admissions committee, whenever I went for my interview, I was like, let's not worry about the standardized test. Let's look at the analytical writing. I was like, so are you trying to tell, and this is where I would turn things around on them. I was like, so do you want students that are great at checking boxes, or do you want students that actually have the ability to think? So I was like, that's what the analytical writing gives you, or at least that's what I think is showing you, is the fact that I have the ability to articulate my point and actually, give you a response which is tangible. You can actually see some reasoning behind it, as opposed to an MCQ, multiple choice question. Yeah, I can just do it through a process of elimination. And yeah, some people are very good at that, and good for them, because most tests, like most of these tests, like if you guys decide to go do the CPA at some point, or the CFA, by the way, is a great certification. I would encourage you guys to, even if you don't want to go through all three levels, go ahead and take level one. Yeah, like a lot of people just do it because they're good test takers. It requires work, but you can still, there's a way to hack it. So, no, I'm not a good test taker, never have been. I definitely struggled, but again, in life, we're not going to be checking off bubbles in a Scantron sheet. You better have a thesis ready. You better have a way to defend whatever your convictions are, and that sort of helps us out. So. And Bruce, I think we're pretty much gone through most of the questions. Like I just want to open up to the rest of the group if you guys have anything outstanding.
One thing that I'm kind of like wondering, so you told me you were on the, or I actually saw the Alumni Engagement Council. That's got like, that's supposed to be kind of relevant towards us, pretty recently. As a few of us were on a call with Carol Moore. I think it was me, Ben, and Liam, which was pretty crazy. Like, I just want to know, like, how has that been? Like, kind of, how is that going with you?
It's going, I mean, it's going. Obviously, I saw that meme that you posted on LinkedIn about, they try to eliminate my major and I took
Oh,
it
yeah,
personally. This is the Michael Jordan meme.
Yeah.
And that's definitely how it felt, right? Where all of a sudden, I'll give money to Guilford once in a while and that's okay. But more importantly, what I'll also try to do is give time. So, and what I was trying to explain to the rest of the alumni committee, so there's a subcommittee called the Retention and Relationship Committee where they want us to reach out not only to current students, but alumni too, and sort of reignite this, some level of pride that we all had for Guilford at one point, right? And what I was, what I told the retention committee is that fine, like some of us may not, like we may be in certain stages of our lives where we can't give money. I was like, supposing you even give your time, supposing we volunteer like 100 hours per year, right? And let's be very conservative and price our time at like, let's say $25 an hour. So at the end of the day, you're dedicating about $2,500 to Guilford in terms of volunteering, right? So which means you can review resumes, you can connect students to, your friends in the industry, sort of like I put you in touch with Raheel, right? So like we all have networks outside of Guilford that we can connect our students to, and let's just try to leverage those and try to help people out, because at the end of the day, if these students don't have jobs, they won't be able to give money, and then it's a vicious cycle after that. I think and that was the only time I actually wrote to Carol or any president when the announcement came out that they were about to eliminate the econ major. I was like, it does not make any sense whatsoever. And that's why we a lot of people are very involved in that. We have weekly meetings, and one of my challenges is that because it's bam in the middle of our workday over here, it's tough for me to meet all those commitments. But we do what we can. We're trying to raise money. We're trying to reach out to alumni and ask them to dedicate time. But I think not only Guilford, a bunch of institutions are sort of strapped financially right now. So it's a very common problem. It's not, Guilford's definitely not an isolated case. I just think our reaction could have been better. And I'm hoping under.
Asad, I have a follow-up question. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. Go ahead.
One of the things that you mentioned is, okay, these students need jobs, but how do we leverage something like coronavirus? What has been a teaching point for you from coronavirus to say, we're in a meeting with Deloitte and we've gone to Ole Miss Graduate School and they say, so what'd you do during COVID? What did you learn? What did you get from that? What do you say? And how do we talk about a Guilford degree? How do we talk about a Guilford degree during COVID and stuff like that?
Well, let them know that, by the way, you had to, you went to school at a time where basically everything was sort of up in the air. Like you had to adjust. Like you guys basically had to do like what you sort of went through. I don't think anybody in the history or recent history has gone through. So the fact that you were able to gain something, the fact that you were able to graduate, you still maintained your grades. I think there's no bigger achievement than that. Like basically you proved to accomplish something before large corporations thought they could. So for example, we obviously had a few core closes since COVID started, and now we understand that we can work remotely. You guys were doing it from the word go, right? Like you adjusted where all of a sudden your classes were on Zoom. You couldn't talk to your peer groups in person anymore, so you had to, I don't know, like schedule Zoom calls or figure out other ways. The fact is, you adjusted, and that's the biggest thing. Is like if you couldn't, like, and by the way, so everybody couldn't do that. I know certain students who were like, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to take a year off and do something else, right? You guys kept at it, and that persistence is something that I think people should recognize. Like things were a lot easier for us than they are for you guys. So if you somehow survive through this and not have a breakdown in the process, I think you've done better than most people out there. So that's something I would definitely market out there and let people know, and hopefully if you end up in front of Deloitte or whoever, like you have your job interview and they bring that up, mention the fact that the fact that I'm in front of you right now, I was able to get a job interview without having the ability to attend a career fair. You've never seen me. The only thing that you're basing your assessment of me on is this piece of paper, which is a very limited resume at the moment. So the fact that I've managed to come in front of you right there, that should be a testament to, your ability and the potential that you have.
Thank you, Asad. I want to ask Hussein or Enrique or Dia if you have any questions. We want to make sure you get those in. Enrique comes from a pretty cool background at this point in working now in Chicago, and I'd love to hear from Dia or Hussein if they have questions as well.
I don't have any questions at the moment, but I mean, if I have something, we'll definitely reach out.
I have one question, like sort of a different question. So I was actually attending the Clorox event on Wednesday about the freshman diversity program, and then they have a 7-day orientation in the Bay Area. And yeah, I was wondering if I don't know if you know, like it's like a human resources programs and stuff. I don't know if you like know this and like like kind of talk about it.
Yeah, so a lot of those programs are really designed for like new grads, right? So they sort of help you go through like various silos, like various departments. Whether it's so for example, if you decide to take the HR route, right? You'd not only be working with benefits, you'll be working with payroll, you'll be working with recruitment, you'll be working with like retention, and a bunch of, or your defined benefit or defined contribution plan group. So the idea is like they'll put you through a rotation, and at the end of it, you'll sort of, at the end of a couple of years, you'll decide, okay, this is what I want to specialize in, and not really specialize, but here's where I want to work for the next couple of years because I find this interesting. So that's what those programs are sort of geared to do. But again, it's a training program, and it's basically designed to help you transition from a very academic environment to the workforce, and those programs are great. I think if you can be a part of them, you learn a lot, and then also kind of helps you kind of derive your career path from there.
Okay, thank you.
No worries.
I just had a comment based on the last thing that you said, Asad, about our perseverance. I just really hope that employers share your sentiment about us getting through this school year, because I know a lot of people are like really just getting through things right now.
Well, and Liam, if they don't, it's not a person or a company you want to work for either. So let me just put it that way. And if they don't see the value where embedded in what you guys have done, then whatever. Like there's several others that would. The one thing I would suggest though, and this is so if you want to learn from one of my mistakes, I really just wanted to be in North Carolina after graduating, right? Who wants to leave the place where you went to school? You have all these friends. Feel free to target bigger markets. So, and that's something I should have done. I should have looked at New York. I should have looked at DC. I should have looked at Chicago, San Francisco, Seattle, you name it. The world's become a lot smaller now, where all, so even if I'm on the West Coast, you guys are on the East Coast, we can still have a conversation. There's direct flights from here to Durham. I can easily fly, home whenever I want. So be open to that. And even if you get an international assignment, like somebody from the UK or I don't know, like somewhere in LATAM is looking at you and they want to consider you for a job, be open to it. Because as I was telling Ben earlier, there will always be that opportunity to move back whenever you want. So if a certain firm or a company in North Carolina doesn't see that, you know what? Don't worry about it. Somebody will, and they'll actually value you for it. And those are the kind of people you do want to work for. So I think we're almost at the hour, Brooks. And guys, I think you all have my email, so feel free to reach out. This doesn't have to be a one and done thing. If there's anything I can do to help you guys out going forward, please do keep me in mind.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you have any questions for us as undergrads, or to understand that perspective? I know you're a little bit involved in Guilford now. Are there things that you're curious about as current undergrads?
Well, Ben, it's great that I think you sort of brought up the point about how things are no longer, like for example, the way you guys are going to school is not our conventional way. It's not what we've done traditionally. it's something I can bring up in one of our meetings where I think, apart from just, asking alumni for money, let's make sure that our current students are set up to succeed. So that's been my focus throughout. And I think, I mean, at this point, if there's ever a concern, anything that you want escalated to the alumni board level, let me know. I'd be happy to do that on your behalf. Like I said, I definitely, there is a bond, there's a little fraternity that we have within econ majors, and I think let's just keep that going. And if I can't help you out, I'm sure I can find somebody who will. And so, yeah, just keep us informed, and we'll try to do the same thing on our end.
Yeah, Asad, thank you so much. I'm at practice right now. It was a pleasure, and I'll reach back out to you. The club will also reach back out to you for a behalf from all of us, and then I'm sure some individuals will want to continue conversations. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely. Likewise, guys. Take care.
Yeah, thank you,
All right.
Asad.
Stay safe. All right.
Miss you, Enrique.
All right. Bye.
Miss y'all too.